Hey, what's up everybody? Video 44 coming at you in another video. All right, so I'm getting out. My first mind tells me to probably go to the observatory because that's literally the only place I know that I often frequent that I can actually charge my phone. And I'm going to want my phone to be charged up nicely so I can draft my team at 4 p.m., which is 4 hours from now. I know how I am. I ain't gonna be home by then. Usually my phone is dead by then. Usually I'm either on a train at that hour or whatever. So I'm trying to figure out, weasel my way to what I want to do and have enough juice on my phone. So I'm not really sure how I'm going to do this. Trusting God to figure out all the important stuff, because I definitely have a lot to talk about on here. So much has happened over the last couple of days. Not personally in my own life, I've been pretty good, but just in the world and things that we often discuss on this channel, it's a lot to digest, I guess. So yeah, man, gotta figure it out. But one thing's for sure, I'm not gonna hold nothing back in regards to talking, because it is that much to talk about. So if my phone happens to die, I think that's worth it. But yeah, man. So where do we start? Israel's using pagers to bomb people. And essentially they sold a bunch of people some pagers, and I believe it was in Lebanon, that were combustible, and they've set them off once yesterday, and then I heard before I left the house they did it again this morning. And of course it's a terrorist attack. I don't know how people look at this, like, because there are a lot of people who are on Israel's side of things, and Israel can basically do no wrong, and the measures that they're going about in regards to being so horrible towards Palestinians and others is to protect themselves, because if they don't act this crazy, then they're going to be swallowed up by the surrounding countries, and ultimately they stole the land, but they're actually stealing it back because they once had it, even though most of these people from Europe and don't want to do any DNA testing to see if they actually have any actual origin to the land. But technically in their faith it doesn't matter that they do, because it belongs to the Jews. So if you adapt the Jewish faith, then therefore you're part of it. So therefore it's by spirit. You know, they got a lot of loopholes in regards to what they're doing to justify the acts. So with that being said, if you're on the side of the Jews deserve the land, and that this is what it takes to keep people off their behind, then you're not going to see this the way that I do, because I don't have that truth in that's not my truth. That's not my truth at all. I don't believe in the ideals of treating people poorly to protect myself. I think that creates more enemies. I don't believe in stealing land back from anyone or anything like that. I think there's a diplomatic way to handle those type of things, and you should search for those solutions through compassion and humility and a certain level of stand down as it pertains to your own importance, and unselfishness in a sense to being able to share without it being a pecking order. And that's just not how they operate. That's not how white supremacy operates, and they adapt our white supremacy ideals. So it's a lot of different things fundamentally as a black person who loves himself and his people that I'm not going to be able to adapt to in regards to this conversation. I think you guys, if you follow me long enough, you already understand where I stand when it comes to Zionist behaviors. But I'm learning to understand how they see themselves and what they think is necessary to do to survive. I don't agree with those ideals. I think that the proof will be shown to them that this doesn't necessarily yield the type of results that they're looking for. But I'm trying to, in my own way, absorb how best they view themselves, because I think that takes a certain level of stepping outside of yourself in order to try to wrap your brain around what they're up to and why they're doing what they're doing and why they justify it and why they expect others would justify it with them. Survival tactics, you know what I mean? Survival tactics of the weak. That's what it really comes down to in my head. Insecure, terrified, so you try to be the craziest in the room so that people leave you alone. It's just like anybody else that you hear stories of a guy going to jail, seeking out the biggest, baddest dude in the room and knocking him out so everybody won't think he's a punk, and standing on the square that he'll fight anything and everything. That's kind of what Israel's on. It's like, I'm looking to demonstrate to you that you need not mess with me, because I'm terrified of you messing with me. I can't just stand here and be. No, I got to demonstrate to the most ruthless, craziest, and demonstrative acts so that within my truth, you will adapt to that truth. It's insecurity personified. It's small d energy if ever there was any. And that's how people operate a lot of times, because they really are scared as hell. So rather than to face the fear that you provide them in letting you hurt them while they sit back in a space of humility and cower for which they think doesn't work, they will behave like the biggest mass murderer in hopes of instilling fear in your heart so that your fear will destroy you, so that it won't be exposed that they are not able to. Right? I need that big bad dude to be terrified of me. And I need everybody around him to be terrified of me. Because if they all come together without fear, I'm destroyed. And that's what Israel's, that's how they operate. That's how Zionists move. That's really what it's about. And so they try to enact fear in us by weaponizing the pagers of these people that they say is Hezbollah. When in actuality, they're just inflicting fear upon the world in regards to their reach and what they can do to all of us. You see what I'm saying? It ain't just about stopping Hezbollah. No, it's about making sure that the world fears that any time your phone could combust in your pocket because of their intentions. So it's to stand down, it's to let them do what they're doing, genociding innocent people and dancing around it to bad techno music in the process. You gotta let them do that, right? Because if not, this could happen to you. And so that's really what the genocide is all about. It's an elaborate demonstration of intentions to be the scariest, biggest, baddest, powerfulest entity in the room. Craziest, irrational, reckless, but still covered entity in the room. You see, that's deliberate in and of itself, to show that I'm reckless and crazy and don't care what happens to anyone around. If my intentions are to be met, you will see them be met regardless of the casualties. Like, that's a demonstration in of itself. That's meant to make people fear you in such a way that you think they will cross lines that you will never be willing to, even on your darkest day. That's what Israel's all about. It's about the demonstration of a certain terrorist energy backed by the covering of many nations and otherwise individuals who will support them, which is more of the influence of what should make you afraid to stand against it, right? Because they control the governments. Nobody in America gonna talk against them. Nobody in the UK gonna talk against them on a federal level. And then they proceed to do the most reckless and like dangerous things, inflicting pain upon innocent people, whoever they deem guilty alike. You know, it's just like, we hurt everybody. We don't care. You will adhere to us, and when we're done doing what we're doing, then we're going to build something beautiful, and we will continue to reign over the world with our propaganda, and we have our own people brainwashed into thinking that they're owed this land and that everybody would otherwise try to hold them accountable for taking it is the worst people in the world that deserve the most horrific things imposed upon them. Like, these are the things that they stand in all of this. All of this comes together to make it what it is. And in being that way, I guess people like myself are supposed to be too afraid to say anything, or too compromised to say anything, or just too otherwise fearful to really stand against that for which is them. But if you're smart and you understand what they're afraid of, and you understand why they're doing what they're doing, then you also understand why you're in a position to come together with yourself and like-minded individuals to create some opposition to that for which is fearful. Fearful first, not crazy, not deviant, none of that. First, fearful. And if you're not fearful, then guess what? You have one up on it. So that's really what it's about, man. Only the fearless can see through the psychology of what it is that they're putting forth. The terroristic energy that's supposed to make you so fearful that you won't use the strength that God gave you to stop it. And that's really what it is, because God didn't give it strength. He gave it a creativity for being aggressive and manipulative and ultimately devious in nature. That's what God gave Israel, the ability to be an example to all of us of what not to do. in gaining and ultimately reigning over others. And so that's what I've learned. So yeah, that's what it is in my mind. I see a weak entity controlling over even weaker entities of mine, and compromised entities of selfishness, engaging in warfare against the innocent and those who praise God, who are not easily corruptible in nature. And so when you see Hezbollah, Lebanese people standing against that, you see this entity use whatever power it has to inflict terror and the demonstration of terror upon it. That's what it does. And we're going to do to them what we can do to them while y'all watching, so you'll be afraid. And so that's what I want to say to Israel, man. I don't live to adhere to man in any way. I don't live for that. You don't know what's going to be the reason or the ending of your life. You don't know. I could lose my life to a million different things just like anyone else could. But what I won't do is live in fear of man as it intends to impose a God complex upon the earth that is riddled in fear and small energy, more or less. I will not adhere to what I deem is small. And that is exactly what I want Israel to understand about me. I think you are small. I think you're small. I think you have a lot, but I don't think you have a whole lot of wisdom in how to handle the pressures of being in the position that you've ultimately rigged yourself to be in. You don't handle it well. Why were you, if that power that you had is as powerful as you demonstrate, why were you not on the land the entire time? Why would it have ever been taken from you in the first place? Why did it take so long for you to be able to rig the world in such a way to get it back? 4,000 years? That's what you say it's been 4,000 years since you had that land? Where were you? And why are you so afraid of doing a DNA test to get the information out to the rest of us that what you are doing is righteous in nature? Is it because it is not? And that not that you were worried about us knowing the truth, but that you can't face it yourself. See, the essence of being diabolical like they are and cowardice and terroristic as they are also comes with a certain fear for the truth, fear for a wisdom that would otherwise make it more responsibly viewed, I guess you can say, or viewed as a responsible entity. All of the things that would be so that someone would come together with their fellow comrades and be righteous. All of those wisdoms and all of that for which makes it so that that's even reasonable to do has to be absent. So there are going to be holes in your logic, small nature of your perception of self, with a confusion and a hypocrisy that would engage in a dual space of reality that you are superior to everyone else, while hiding from facts and replacing those facts with your own lies that you ultimately have others engage in if possible. Like, it takes a whole lot to convince yourself or to be of the spirit and mind to do the things that Israel's engaging in. It has to be a lot wrong with your space of perception, your space of putting things together mentally, your collective spiritual space of what it is that you ultimately will believe in, your base from which your morals are. All of that has to be deeply, deeply flawed. And in flaws that are there, in those flaws, what you find is very simple debunkings of the lies they believe in, simple proof of the smallness of the nature that they engage in, mistakes made in covering its backside. All of these different flaws have to be present in order to even be that way. You know what I'm saying? In order to convince yourself that children need to die in order for you to survive. To convince yourself that a whole nation, a whole world of people is going to sit back and watch you traumatize all of us with this genocide and be fine with it. It has to be something very, it has to be multiple things in place that are wrong with you in order for that to all come together to even be. Because if you had a lick of sense, more or less, you ain't gonna even surmise that this is something that you would be better for doing. You know what I'm saying? That's what it really comes down to. So there's plenty wrong with them if you just pay attention to it. There's plenty of deviant energy that otherwise supports the suffering of others for the betterment of itself, or the idea that it deserves something that it wasn't actually given, or the fact that it was given something that it was actually not able to receive without doing something it had no business doing. Like, these are things that have to be in place in order to even engage in that nonsense. And as many as Zionists out here that wants us to adapt to the normalization of what it is they're engaging in, they can't seem to get around the logic that the rest of us see and the holes in the nonsense that it tells, and the repetitive nature of the plays, so to speak, that they run in engaging in what they engage in to get the things that ultimately they say they deserve. It just, none of this stuff comes together in any way. The behavior is folly. The behavior is arrogant in nature without any wisdom attached to it. Those who support it and those who are under it, when they use their mouths to speak and you retort with logic to them, a lot of times they rebuke that logic. They can't let it in. Like, that is the presence of what is ultimately needed in order to be a genocidal maniac. That you can't allow reason to come in. That you don't allow the presence of fairness to be a part of what it is your equation is. You see what I'm saying? That you have to have it so that you stand in the presence of hypocrisy without questioning why two don't come together, so to speak. Why 1 and 1 can't equal 2 in your world. You have to be okay with it not, in order to even justify what they're doing. In order to engage in it without conscious, you have to be deeply brainwashed into believing some bullcrap, for which they are. So it is what it is, man. That's really all I gotta say. And they're weaponizing everything they can to make people fearful of them. But the problem is, if I can find a lie in every corner of your story, it's only but so much fear I can convince myself to harbor. And that's what they don't understand. The demonstration of chaos, if the motivation of that chaos holds so many holes in its story, eventually you're going to see the presence that the chaos is deliberate and not random. It's the motivation behind that chaos that ultimately would be fearful. It would inspire fear, rather. It's the motivation of truth behind those terroristic threats and terroristic behaviors that ultimately would inspire a deep level of fear. But if I can see why you're doing everything you're doing, and I can also see that your mind is not putting 2 and 2 together to help you understand why you shouldn't do it, then I also know how to work around you in a sense that my intentions don't have those holes in it. When I tell the world, hey, this is what's going on, the world can go back, put 2 and 2 together and make sense of my story. It can't make any sense of your story because your story's a lie. There are a bunch of people from all over the world who are coming together claiming something that you don't believe was actually given to you, and you want us to believe something that you don't believe yourself. You say you believe in God, but you don't adhere to anything that would otherwise preserve what it is he put together. You say you adhere to a God that made you the chosen one, but all you do is destroy and manipulate, rig the game. And in the presence of all of this, you need entire countries to pantomime as if what they see isn't true, so that you can engage in what it is that you need to without the presence of disruption. You need my country to basically lie for you in order for you to do what it is that you say God wants you to do. God cannot be so flawed as to have so many holes in the story that he has in place for you if you're so chosen. Why is there so many lies in everything that you have going on? Why is it so easy to debunk every bit of your story? You see what I'm saying? So that's what it really comes down to. You have to be deeply, either one, intentional on seeing people suffer, sadomasochistic, whatever the word would be, in your heart, as to which there's something very wrong with you if you support that nonsense. Or you have to have been brainwashed by a certain ideology that would allow for you to believe without proof, that you are superior. And in that superiority complex, you have to then become fearful of what comes about if someone were to threaten that superiority, as to which it wouldn't really be superior in and of itself. It could be threatened at all, is it not? So it's a lot of stuff that you have to deliberately avoid in regards to logic in order to even engage in what it is that they live by every single day. You have to avoid wisdom, avoid truth, avoid logic, avoid decency and what comes with what to equal what. You have to avoid a lot of real simple, just easy stuff to see in order to just line up with the Zionists and say, yeah, they're the superior and therefore. You have to be deeply compromised or deeply brainwashed. And so that's what I'm here to tell everybody, man. I don't fear them, man. I don't fear them. I don't think you should either. Not to say that they can't hurt people, because clearly they're hurting people. But they're only hurting people because they have the presence of an entire several nations who don't necessarily stand up to them. It's not because they can do this while people are. You understand what I'm saying? They can't do this if everybody look at them and say, yo, we see you, and we're not supporting this. Then it becomes a situation where the weakness that they actually are gets exposed, and the demonstrations end up being futile in nature. Those demonstrations have to work. They have to make you believe they are untouchable in order for them to actually be untouchable. Otherwise, they just getting closed in on. Every bit of the walls that they have between them starts to squeeze on them like a Indiana Jones movie. And so that's what I'm telling all of y'all, man. That was my first statement. Israel, I can't tell you how much my God moves me against you. That of the American faction of Zionism, Christian Zionism, Judaism, Zionism, you have no idea how little fear your opponent has of you. And it ain't because your demonstrations haven't been quote unquote terrifying. It's because your motivation is backed by many lies and many revealings of deep, deep fear. And the presence of that fear gives me strength, because I know what you fear is faith, and I harbor plenty of it. So that's what I want to tell you. And my mortal body, yeah, it's important to me. I like having all of my limbs. I like having the freedom to speak and the freedom to move. But this life is very limited as it pertains to how long it's gonna last. I've already given this thing 40 years. You understand what I'm saying? So regardless if everything goes right or wrong, it ain't that much more time left here for someone like myself. What I care most about is the truth in regards to protecting people who don't deserve to have their lives brushed aside by the presence of lies. Do you understand what I'm saying? By the presence of lies and the presence of a superiority complex backed by an entity that is small in nature, very small. And even though you have a good portion of the Western world confused by the smallness of your nature, there are a few of us who deeply understand how small you are, and we are not afraid of you. We know that it's our duty to not be afraid of you, and it's our duty to awaken everyone else to the idea that they shouldn't be afraid of you either. The more you do this, the more you will come to understand that your resistance becomes more and more intentional, not the other way around. You are not going to push anyone off of you by demonstrating terroristic behavior. You are not going to get anyone off your backside by continuing to corrupt politicians who have very, very low moral standards and a low frequency about their spirit into doing and speaking your will. It's not going to work. We just look at them as pitifully as we look at you and keep pushing forward. Blessed be the name of the Lord. So that's really what I have to say, man. Many people pray many different ways, but I know they're coming up against the same enemy each and every way. And that's why I don't really back myself into a religious space. I believe in Christ because that's the God I was given. But as I tell God frequently, if I happen to have that wrong, it's nothing for me to look at you and say, okay, what is right? Let me move forward in the way that you intend. Because it's not about me getting it right. I'm a mortal man with limited understanding. It's about me learning how to make God happy with the intentions that he has upon my vessel before the end of my life. So if for some reason I get to the heaven and he says, yo, this wasn't the right way to pray, I'll just say, well, whatever was would have been what I was willing. That's really what it comes down to. I wouldn't have turned you away if it turned out that you were you preferred another way. And it's within your will to turn me away if you see fit. But I'm not going to let that run the show in regards to my spirit, just to say that I'm pushing away my Muslim brother or pushing away my Buddhist brother because of the teachings that my religion has otherwise placed in position for me to separate myself from people that otherwise need my prayers. I'm not going to do that. I think religion is a man-made thing, no different than the ideology of Zionism is a man-made thing. And if people had the truth and the proof, there wouldn't be so many people doing things that ultimately leave us in a space where we got to fight genocide and fight dystopian behavior in the presence of wrongdoing and things that separate people by race that they truly believe in based on religion. The presence of that is flawed in and of itself. So as to me being so aligned with a certain religion negates the details and of that data. That someone could live and die on something so passionately and be so terribly wrong about their assessment of the people around them as they do so. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not going to ignore that data at all. I'm too intelligent to do that. So that's really what it comes down to, man. My Muslim brother is in trouble. My Arabic brother is in trouble. And he's being discriminated against, genocided against, and ultimately terrorized against by the same people who terrorize my people. That's it. That is the reality of it. And the same thing that he did to my people, he's doing to them now. He's taking all the hatred and the vitriol and the small nature of what it is that his fear is behind me, his fear of me, and he's placed it upon the Arabs. Because he no longer has the leverage to do it to me. That's exactly what's happening right now. He no longer has the leverage to do that to the black man. So he's turned all that hatred and vitriol toward the brown man, the Arab man. And I'm supposed to sit back and let him do it when he's running the same plays on them, as if I didn't know these plays were being run. I know the plays. You did them all to my people. You did them all to my ancestors. I know exactly what this is when I see it. It's the same old tired rhetoric. You call him a terrorist, you call me the N-word. Same thing. You paint Hamas out to be the worst guys in the world. You painted Black Panthers out to be the worst guys in the world. All they ever did was want to be able to live out from underneath your terroristic, fearful, and intentional energy upon their bodies and spirits. You wanted the world to continue to yield to your supremacy as you continue to irresponsibly wield that upon us. And we resisted that because it was within our safety to do so, since you were so intentional on mistreating us. It was a safety issue. We weren't being disruptive. We were protecting ourselves from terrorists. Terrorists who had already proven themselves time and time again to be immoral and intentional on dehumanizing us. As they were intentional in dehumanizing many peoples before they turned their attention toward us. And if the Arabs were paying attention close enough to how they did the blacks and how they did the Native Americans, then they would be very aware of what's happening to them now. It's the same damn thing. And that's why it's important that we start turning our attention to how the Arabs are being treated. Because too many people have made the mistake of thinking white supremacy wasn't going to turn its attention toward them. And eventually it did. And we, in the presence of technology, have the power to pay attention to said things. Unlike the blacks in Africa, who couldn't see what they were doing to the Native Americans before they got here. You couldn't prepare yourself for that. The next peoples who they plan on doing this to can. If it's the Asians, if it's the Spanish, whoever they're gonna do this to next, you don't have the excuse of being caught off guard by these same things if they're successful in doing it here when they decide to do it to you. Because you would have seen it over and over and over again. And my voice is supposed to be one of many voices to help navigate the eyes of those who would otherwise look away to see why they should be intentional on looking dead at the bullcrap. that these people are engaging in for not only reasons of taking back your country or taking back your power against it, but as a damn safety issue, because these are individuals who get off on killing people in some very devious ways and lead us not find ourselves outside of the understanding that that is what they are into. Black skin shoes, cannibalism, pedophilia. Do you understand what I'm saying? These are practices that they've been engaging in every one of these circumstances. Every one of them. This is what they do. And we can get upset at me for saying it, but the evidence is in every one of these stories, including the one that's taking place right now. Story came out this morning that they were raping children. Anybody surprised? You shouldn't be. They did it to the blacks. They did it to the natives. They do it to everybody they touch. It's not enough for them to take over the land. They got to enact their deviant desires and depraved desires upon the people that they're doing it to. It's not as simple as them having more power and them engaging that power. It's them getting off on how they mistreat people. That ultimately is why we need to be aggressive in deterring the behavior of this entity. It's a safety issue. It has been a safety issue. And I'm not mad at white skin. There are many white people who agree with me. I got white people who ultimately make up the DNA in my flesh. If it wasn't for European, UK-ish blood, whatever that would be, I wouldn't be here standing here today pleasurably telling you to step against white supremacy. If not for the presence of my own DNA in white supremacy. But that doesn't mean that I can't be an example of what we should be in regards to standing against it. And I say the same thing to my pure white brethren. White supremacy is not your friend, just like Zionism is not the Jewish man's friend. It weaponizes itself against the betterment of you and the better engagement of who you actually are. It's meant to make you look bad, and make you look like a threat, make you look like you have no humanity within you. That's what it's meant to do. It puts on your hat and it proceeds to do the worst thing to give you the worst reputation. That's what it is. No, you shouldn't want that crap in your life. No, you shouldn't want that representing you. It should be not in your name at all times when it comes to the engagement of slaughtering children, of manipulating mass media and propaganda against that for which is righteous, that for which is true, that for which comes together to make any damn sense. You shouldn't want any part of that. I don't hate white people. I got white in my family. My niece is going to grow up a Caucasian woman. She may go on to keep her family white. I don't want this to come back and backlash her. I have no interest in seeing her family tree destroyed just simply because of the influx of nonsense that has been in our world for as long as it has in regards to the representation that poorly represents her and her people. No. I don't want that for her. If she don't know of any part of her black family, she should never know the wrath that comes with the poor representation of her people. That's coming from the love of her uncle. So don't look at me and say I'm mad at white people. That's a poor representation and a poor assessment of what it is I'm actually trying to do here. No different than it's a poor representation to me when I say that I'm mad at everybody who's Jewish. No. I'm trying to read out the poison within your community through the logic of humanity and the understanding that nobody's better than nobody, but there are people who are starting at different levels, and it has to be taken into account. If we're going to be fair, we can't assume everybody's starting from the same plane, can we? Some people got a head start, some people got a further behind start. Some people come with a lot of people in their family, other people get born to the earth with nothing. We can't assume that giving everybody the same thing is the way to be even and balanced. That's not the real deal. Many people want to talk about fairness, but they want to divvy out the same amount to everybody. We know damn well some are giving more than others. That's not real math. If we're going to do math, do it right. And we're afraid to do that. And I'm going to normalize not being afraid of stuff like that, but we should be more so afraid of what happens when we don't. We keep on talking about it. It's the consequences of circumstances. A lot of people are married to the idea of consequences and how they try to either avoid those or married to the idea of outcomes and how you avoid those, you need the strength that allow you to deal with any outcome. You don't know what's coming. You have no idea what's next. You go around that corner, $1 million might be sitting right there for you. It changed your life forever. You think that's a blessing? Maybe not. Because now you got more problems in regards to having more money. It's no perfect science. You might find yourself on the down and out without any money. Well, guess what? In the presence of being on that path, you end up meeting the person you're supposed to be with for the rest of your life. Now that was the best blessing you ever had. And she's going to end up rich, so you don't end up broke. In the end, it's like it's not a perfect science to any of this. But if we keep on racking up the worst of karma, and we keep on letting people represent us poorly, and we keep on engaging in false truths that align some with a lot and the rest with nothing, believe me, we increase the chances of things going worse for the many of us. Increases the chance of people not having enough to start, so to speak. You got to get to the root of the problem if you want to fix it. Otherwise, you're just chipping away at the tip of the iceberg. It don't really do nothing for you. What I'm telling you is we have a human cancer on our earth, and it's been here for thousands and thousands of years. And it wants to make people of lighter skin look like horrible human beings without any morals. It's the truth. The less melanin you have, the worse it wants you to appear to the rest of us. It wants to kill children, put forth a recklessness, and be ever so arrogant about the folly of the whole thing. Make fun of people suffering. It wants to do everything so that I look at you and say, you deserve to die. Without assessing your character, without assessing if you align with that or anything. If you don't be a deterrent to that, then you may fall victim to it, or worse, someone that you care for may fall victim to it. I'm not letting it happen to my niece. I'm not letting it happen to my boy Bilski's son. You understand what I'm saying? My Polish homie, who's been my brother. You think I want his son to fall victim to the karma that comes against him for being a white person? Nah, I don't want that shit. I give my life to make sure that little boy is safe off the strength of my friendship with his brother, with his father. So why would I want anything bad to happen to him? I want the world to be safer for him, and it starts from the inside out. We cannot let white supremacy, Zionist supremacy, and that of which are people who are from his country, Poland, going to the Middle East and then saying they deserve it because they happen to be, and therefore. Now my little homie gets to be vilified for the entirety of his life because of what people who were from his country did. Nah. You think I ain't speaking against that? You ain't even paying attention to me. I'm looking to protect my little boy over there. I'm looking to protect my niece. I'm looking to protect all of my white friends, my homie Smokey and his kids. These are people I care about. Deeply want to see succeed and believe they want the same for myself. I'm not speaking against them and their humanity. I'm speaking against that for which weaponizes itself against them by way of poor representation while wearing their skin. I want people to really let that sink in, because many people, without the presence of deep thought, will convince you I'm either a terrorist sympathizer against white people, a racist, and all these different types of things, when I just told you, absolutely told you what my intentions are and what I'm thinking about. I just told you. Now ask yourself how many of those people who would tell you I'm a terrorist are doing the greatest job of making it so that you, who wear their skin, who wave their flag, have little to no enemies in your life based on their efforts and merits in demonstration. How many of them are doing a good enough job of awakening the world around them of the decency and the humanity of your people? Well, how many of them are doing a good enough job to look as if they care about the humanity of others, so that they can reflect a certain level of grace that otherwise they want imposed upon people that look like them? How many of them are doing that? How many of them even know to do that? They think being on offense is defense. Let me be the craziest, evilest, devilish person in the world, and then people will stay away from me. No, they won't. No, they won't. No, they won't. They're going to want you out of here. They're going to do everything they can to weaponize whatever they can within their arsenal against you so that they can protect their loved ones from that threat that you happen to be. That's what really happens there. That's what actually happens there, Israel. You don't get to sit on the land after you did all this evil stuff on the bones of babies and now build up your wonderful land. No, friend. Now you got to wonder who's coming to get you for doing it. From what angle will they be coming? Who's going to be bombing everything in your vicinity? Who's going to be looking for any stragglers that leave your area so they can snipe them out? If that's the only way they can get to them. You ain't going to be able to do nothing but stand in that little area and hope people will come and frequent your businesses in that space. Hope they will. When enough demonstrations of how unsafe it will be for them start to enact, you will understand that this was a failure. That what you did was bad for your morality, bad for your reputation, and ultimately terrible for your business. Ain't nobody gonna want to come to Greater Israel. Not with the presence of the truth being in all of our heads 10 years from now. You think anybody gonna forget about that? I ain't coming there. I still remember what you did to the children that ultimately lived there beforehand. I still have images and footage of that on my phone. You think we're going to herald your soldiers, your idea of soldiers as heroes? Every time one of them pass away, I'm thinking a child is safer because of it. Y'all ain't no heroes. You believed in an entitled ideology that you put your lives on and the lives of everyone in your wake on. A lie that you couldn't even stand on in a sense to allow yourself to prove whether it's true or not. With just a little bit of DNA testing, you could prove if your ass belongs in that land or not. But you refuse to do that because if you have to do that, then you realize that so much of what you've already done was never necessary, should not have been done. You were, in fact, someone that needed to be stopped. And you know that deep enough down in your heart, which is why you don't want anybody to do these DNA tests on you. You don't want anybody to do that. You don't want anybody to look at your situation and say, you know what? Not only does it not yield the reaction that they were hoping it would yield, but they are the worst people in the world to have ever lived because of what it is that they allowed themselves to believe and further act upon. They don't want that truth nowhere near them, and yet they do not enough to remove that from what it is that ultimately will be coming their way. It's just like getting fat and happy in any other situation. You're not going to be strong enough to face whatever is coming your way because you've allowed yourself to relax for too damn long. And now you're in a space where everyone around you has a more resistance to the struggle that you have upon your head because they've struggled some. And ironically enough, it's because of you that they did. You're talking about where's the humanity in a tenth of what it is that ultimately they are suffering. A tenth of that. Your water get turned off and you talking about where's the humanity. You're weak. These people are suffering everything you put them through and still stand. I'd say they're stronger than you. And in the grand scheme of things, have more value to their life because of that strength for which they can share with others in the know-how to cope and deal with what it is that ultimately could come any of our way. So as you say, what have they provided to the world in value? I tell you, the presence of perseverance through struggle, which is rare. For those who want to know what the value of the poor man is, it's the ability to live when everything's desolate around it. For which the actions of the rich man is ultimately going to leave his environment any damn way. I wanted to get into so many different other subjects, but that's really all I have to say, man. There are a lot of things that I will want to discuss as the day progresses, but really it just comes down to one thing in this conversation. Fearing Israel is what ultimately Israel needs in order to face the fear that is your humanity. It absolutely needs you to be fearful based on the demonstrations of recklessness, terroristic behavior, and depravity that it ultimately engages in on an hour-to-hour basis. It needs that. It needs you to comply with its intentions. It needs you to align with so much terror and fear that you will stand silent, complicit, and ultimately intentional on rooting it on as it continues to do things that you and I know you would not allow anyone else to do. It needs you to do that. It needs you to do that, or else it can't be as it is, and is then forced to face what ultimately makes it as small as it actually is. And if you think there's anything that they're doing to anybody that's going to make that any less true, then you haven't been paying attention to what it is they're actually showing you through their actions. That's the God's honest truth. A truth that they are terrified of. A truth that they desperately need none of us to truly grasp. They need us not to be able to comprehend the data. They need us not to have the wisdom against their actions. They need us to be so terrified of what it is that they're doing to somebody else that we think we have no shot at stopping them from doing it to us. For which I'm here to tell you is only true if you continue to move with them instead of against the grain for which they want you to be aligned with. So that's what I'm here to tell y'all, man. I ain't afraid of them, dude. I'm not compromised by them. I'm not sitting here saying I want anything they can give me. Everything they have is cursed. That's what's become very clear to me. I'm privy to the understanding of an actual living God who doesn't take kindly to me with the understanding that I have of his existence, going against him regardless of what the world is trying to do, what the world thinks makes sense, what the world is trying not to have to think about in regards to making sense of these things. He don't really care about what the world is telling me to do. He's already made it very, very clear what makes him unhappy in regards to myself. And it's majority of what it is I'm seeing out of most of the people around me, which is a complicit nature to the evils done outside of our borders. And a certain superiority complex that we're supposed to have in regards to this being our land, even though it's stolen. I'm going to leave y'all with this. I was listening to a brother that I like a lot on the internet. I respect a lot on the internet, but his mind still needs to grow in regards to one subject. And I don't know that the evidence of what the truth is in his environment from which to absorb so that that growth can take place. Black people in America, particularly in this land here, this is not your land. You were stolen from your land, brought here to work for free and be at the behest of the evil entity known as white supremacy. You were put here to let them get their jollies off on your suffering and to ultimately build what it is that they wanted you to build. They held you till they no longer had the leverage to do so anymore. And now we're out here straggling, trying to find our way. That is the presence of our reality. This is not your land. So when we start talking about the presence of people of being of brown skin who are taking over our communities, we need to understand the origin of why we're actually here. Now, many of us will say black people were already here, but a lot of who are paying attention to me who are black were not. And we need to understand that. Yes, were they black people here? Absolutely. Were all of us here? Hell no. We were stolen from somewhere, and we need to respect that. This is their land. They can come up from the bottom of the Americas and flood this place to be way more plentiful than we will ever be able to be, based on the fact that our origin is from over in Africa somewhere. If you want to be the majority, that's where you at. Not here. Looking at them as your op and having a certain superiority complex about your neighborhood as it pertains to whether or not they should inhabit it negates the truth about how this process came about. You were stolen. None of this is yours. It's theirs. It was stolen from them. But they were not eradicated from this place like they're trying to do to the Palestinians, which means they can always flood this place and have more of them than it is of us and whites and Asians and anybody else who transplanted here. It's not your fault, black person, that this is your reality. You are a victim. And many of us don't want to adapt to the victim mentality because it makes us feel weak that we do. But as I've tried to argue, you can't negate the truth. You're a victim. Making yourself strong against what you consider your opposition in regards to the brown people on their land is futile. It's more of them. It's way more of them. The best thing you can do is accept that you are a victim in this place, stolen by people who also took the place. That's the God's honest truth. We need to stop saying that this our community, I don't like them coming in like this ain't your none of this is yours. None of it's your fault, but none of it is yours. And the sooner we absorb that, the sooner we become better than those who stole us and the land. Because as long as we adapt the mentality of them that we can inhabit a land that isn't ours and then proceed to think that we can stand on it without it actually being something wrong with that, we ain't no different than the colonizer himself. We ain't no different than Israel. You're doing the same shit. BDL 44, I thank y'all for watching.